My mom sent a message. "We've deleted your number and changed the locks. You're no longer part of this family." I responded, "Understood. But you forgot one crucial thing." Then I canceled the $5,200 monthly payment covering their house, the one I'd been quietly making for 3 years. 4 days later, their lawyer left a voicemail. "We need to talk immediately." I never contacted back, because by then, the bank had already seized it. I, 32M, stared at my phone screen, reading the message for the 3rd time. The words hadn't changed. My mother's text was short, cold, and final. "We've deleted your number and changed the locks. You're no longer part of this family." No explanation. No phone call. Just a text message ending 32 years of what I thought was a relationship. I sat in my office, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, and felt something shift inside me. Not sadness. Not anger. Something colder. I typed back a simple response. "Understood. But you forgot one crucial thing." I didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. Then I opened my banking app and navigated to the automatic payments section. There it was, the monthly transfer of $5,200 to the mortgage company, covering the house my parents lived in. The house I'd been paying for since I was 29 years old. 3 years of silent payments they thought were somehow magically handled. I selected the payment and hit cancel. The confirmation appeared instantly. Payment canceled. Future transfers suspended. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. The decision should have felt heavier, but it didn't. It felt like finally setting down a weight I'd been carrying for too long. The backstory was complicated, like most family situations are. 3 years ago, my parents were drowning. Dad's business had collapsed after his partner embezzled funds and disappeared. Mom's health issues meant mounting medical bills. They were 60 days from foreclosure, and I was the only one in a position to help. My older sister had her own financial problems, and my younger brother was still in college. I made decent money as a software engineer at a tech company. Not wealthy, but comfortable. When I saw the foreclosure notice on their kitchen counter during a visit, I didn't hesitate. I told them I'd handle it. They cried. They hugged me. They promised it was temporary, just until Dad got back on his feet. That was the agreement. Temporary help until things stabilized. Except things never stabilized. Dad found part-time work, but nothing substantial. Mom's condition improved, but never enough for her to return to work. And the temporary arrangement became permanent. I never complained. I never mentioned it. I just kept making the payments, month after month, because they were my parents, and that's what you do. But something else happened during those 3 years. Something that had been building for a while finally reached a breaking point. My parents had always favored my sister. It was subtle when we were kids, but as adults, it became impossible to ignore. She was the golden child who could do no wrong. Her failed businesses were brave attempts at entrepreneurship. Her 3 divorces were the result of choosing the wrong men. Her constant need for money was just temporary bad luck. Meanwhile, I was the dependable one, the boring one, the one who showed up, did what needed to be done, and never caused problems. Which meant I was also the one who got taken for granted. The final straw came 3 weeks before that text message. My sister wanted to throw an elaborate 50th birthday party for Mom. She had grand plans involving a rented venue, catering, and a guest list of over 100 people. The budget was astronomical, and she expected me to fund half of it. I said no. For the first time in years, I simply said no. I explained that I was already carrying significant financial responsibilities for the family and couldn't take on more. I suggested something smaller, more intimate, more affordable. The reaction was explosive. My sister called me selfish. She said I made good money and should be willing to contribute to family events. She accused me of not caring about Mom. And instead of defending me, my parents sided with her. Dad said I was being unreasonable. Mom said she was disappointed in me. They made it clear that my financial contributions were expected, not appreciated, and that refusing to do more was a betrayal. I held firm. The party happened anyway, scaled down and funded entirely by my sister with money she borrowed from friends. It was nice enough. I attended, brought a thoughtful gift, and tried to smooth things over. But the tension remained. My sister barely spoke to me. My parents were distant and cold. Then came the text message. The disownment. The locks changed. The number deleted. For days after I canceled the mortgage payment, the phone call started. Not from my parents. They still had no idea I'd been the one paying the mortgage. The mortgage company handled everything directly with the bank, and my parents just assumed their own payment plan was somehow working out. They didn't ask questions because they didn't want to know the answers. No, the first call came from their lawyer, a man named Richard something, whose voicemail was urgent and professional. He said there was a critical matter regarding my parents' property that required immediate discussion. He left his number and emphasized the time-sensitive nature of the situation. I listened to the voicemail twice, then deleted it. The next day, 3 more calls. 2 from the lawyer, 1 from an unknown number that I suspected was my father finally figuring out something was wrong. I let them all go to voicemail. The lawyer's messages became more insistent. He used words like foreclosure proceedings and imminent legal action and strongly advised contact. I didn't respond to any of them. By day 6, my sister started calling. I didn't answer those either, but I did listen to her voicemails. The first one was angry, accusing me of playing games and demanding I call her back. The second one was panicked, saying Mom and Dad were facing some kind of financial crisis and asking if I knew anything about it. The third one was desperate, actually using the word please for the first time in years. I deleted those too. The timeline moved faster than I expected. The mortgage company didn't waste time once the payment stopped. They sent a notice of default immediately. When my parents couldn't explain the missing payment because they didn't know there had been a payment to miss, things escalated quickly. The bank discovered that for 3 years, the mortgage had been paid by an external account, my account, and now that account had stopped paying. My parents tried to argue that they'd been making payments, but the records showed otherwise. The confusion and panic must have been intense. They'd been living in a house they thought was being paid for by some kind of arrangement they'd made with the bank during the financial crisis. They never looked closely at the statements. They never asked questions. They just accepted the miracle and moved on. When the miracle ended, reality crashed down hard. The lawyer's voicemails became increasingly desperate. He explained that the foreclosure process had been accelerated due to the unusual circumstances of the case. He said there might be options if we could all sit down and discuss the situation. He practically begged me to call him back. I didn't. 2 weeks after I canceled the payment, I received a certified letter at my apartment. It was from my mother. The handwriting on the envelope was shaky. I almost didn't open it. I stood in my kitchen, holding the envelope, feeling nothing. Eventually, curiosity won. I tore it open. The letter was 4 pages long, handwritten, and rambling. She started with apologies, saying things had gotten out of hand, that the text message was sent in anger, that she didn't mean it. Then she moved to confusion, asking if I knew anything about the mortgage situation, mentioning that the bank was saying someone else had been paying for years. Then came the request, thinly veiled as a question, asking if I could help them figure out what was happening. She never directly acknowledged that I'd been the one paying. Even in her moment of crisis, she couldn't admit what I'd done for them. I read the letter once, then put it in a drawer. The bank seized the house on day 23. The speed was unusual, but given the complicated circumstances and the fact that my parents couldn't provide any coherent explanation for the payment situation, the bank pushed through the foreclosure process aggressively. They wanted to cut their losses and move on. I found out through a text from my brother, who'd apparently been contacted by our sister in a panic. He asked if I'd heard what was happening, said Mom and Dad were devastated, asked if there was anything I could do to help. His message was kind, not accusatory, which was why I actually responded to him. I told him I knew about the situation and that there was nothing I could or would do. He didn't push. He just said he understood and that he was sorry things had gotten to this point. My sister, however, exploded. She somehow got my new number. I'd changed it after the disownment text and left a voicemail that was pure rage. She screamed about how I'd destroyed our parents, how I'd hidden my involvement with the mortgage payments, how I'd deliberately sabotaged them. She called me vindictive, cruel, and sociopathic. She said I'd never been a real part of the family anyway, and that they were better off without me. The irony of that last statement wasn't lost on me. My parents ended up moving in with my sister. Her house was small, and from what I heard through my brother, the arrangement was tense. 3 adults with complicated histories and fresh wounds, all crowded into a space designed for one. Dad apparently spent most of his time in the garage. Mom's health declined with the stress. My sister complained constantly about the burden of taking care of them, the burden she'd expected me to carry forever without complaint. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering. That's what people don't understand about revenge. It's not satisfying. It doesn't fill the hole or heal the wound. It's just a decision to stop letting yourself be hurt by people who don't value you. I didn't cancel the mortgage payment to punish them. I canceled it because they'd already removed me from the family. They'd changed the locks. They'd deleted my number. They'd made it clear I was no longer their son. So I simply stopped acting like one. Update 1. 3 months passed. I moved to a new apartment across town, started therapy to work through the complicated feelings about everything, and focused on my work. Life became quieter, simpler. I dated someone briefly, though it didn't last. I traveled for the first time in years, taking a solo trip to Iceland that I'd always talked about, but never made time for. My brother checked in occasionally. He was careful not to take sides, which I appreciated. He told me Dad had found a full-time job finally, something in warehouse management. Mom was adjusting to the smaller space, but struggling with feeling dependent on my sister. The tension between them was apparently constant. Then my brother mentioned something interesting. My sister had started complaining about her own financial situation, saying she couldn't afford to support 2 additional adults on her salary. She'd apparently expected me to eventually cave and resume helping the family financially. When months passed, and I didn't, she realized the burden she'd been so quick to criticize me for not carrying was now entirely hers. My brother said she tried to get him to reach out to me about helping with expenses. He refused. He told her that if she wanted my help, she could ask me herself, though he doubted I'd respond. He was right. She never called. Pride, I suppose, or maybe she genuinely believed I'd never help again. She was right about that. Update 2. 6 months after the foreclosure, I received an unexpected visitor at my new apartment. I answered the knock to find my father standing in the hallway. He looked older than I remembered, grayer, more tired. He asked if he could come in. I almost said no, but something in his expression made me step aside. We sat in my living room, the silence heavy between us. He didn't apologize right away. Instead, he asked about my life, about work, about whether I was doing okay. I gave short answers. I wasn't interested in small talk. Finally, he got to the point. He said he'd figured out months ago that I'd been paying the mortgage. He said he'd looked through old bank statements, talked to the mortgage company, pieced it together. He said he'd wanted to reach out sooner, but didn't know how. He said he was sorry. I asked him what he was sorry for. Was he sorry for taking my money for 3 years without acknowledging it? Sorry for siding with my sister when she attacked me? Sorry for the text message disowning me? Or sorry that the money stopped? He flinched. Then he said he was sorry for all of it. He said he'd failed as a father, that he'd let pride and shame and fear cloud his judgment. He said he knew he couldn't undo what had been done, but wanted me to know he understood what I'd sacrificed. I told him I'd sacrificed it willingly when I thought I was part of a family. But once they made it clear I wasn't, the sacrifice stopped making sense. I said I didn't regret helping them when I did, and I didn't regret stopping when they disowned me. I told him I'd moved on. He asked if there was any chance we could rebuild something. Not go back to how things were, but maybe find a new way forward. I thought about it for a long time before answering. Then I told him I wasn't sure, that the wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. But that maybe, eventually, we could have some kind of relationship. Not like before. Something different. Something where I wasn't the dependable one being taken for granted, but where we met as equals, if we met at all. He nodded. He said he understood. Then he stood to leave. At the door, he turned back and said one more thing. He said Mom wanted to reach out, but was too ashamed. He said my sister would never admit she was wrong, but was struggling with the weight of everything. And he said he respected my decision, whatever it ended up being. After he left, I sat on my couch for a long time, staring at nothing. The conversation hadn't brought closure. It had just opened up new questions about what forgiveness meant and whether some bridges, once burned, could ever be rebuilt. Update 3. A year after everything fell apart, I'm still figuring out what comes next. I've kept minimal contact with my father, occasional text messages, one brief coffee meetup where we talked about surface-level things. My mother sent a letter 6 months ago, handwritten and genuine, apologizing without making excuses. I wrote back, not forgiving, not reconciling, just acknowledging her words. It felt like the right amount of response. My sister and I haven't spoken. I don't think we ever will. Some relationships aren't meant to be repaired, and I've made peace with that. My brother and I have gotten closer. He's finishing his degree and has made it clear he won't let anyone pressure him into playing mediator. I respect that. We have dinner every few weeks, talk about our lives, avoid the family drama. It's the healthiest relationship I have with anyone from my past. The therapy has helped. I've worked through the anger, the guilt, the complicated feelings about whether I did the right thing. My therapist asked me once if I regretted how things unfolded. I thought about it carefully before answering. I said I regretted that my family put me in a position where I had to choose between my own well-being and their expectations. But I didn't regret choosing myself, because that's what it came down to. For years, I'd sacrificed my own financial security, my own peace of mind, my own life, to support people who saw it as an obligation rather than a gift. And the moment I set a boundary, they cut me off. So I simply accepted the cut and stopped giving what they'd already decided I didn't know. People ask if I'll ever fully reconcile with my parents. The honest answer is I don't know. Maybe someday we'll find a way to have a relationship built on mutual respect rather than unspoken expectations. Maybe we won't. Either way, I'm okay. I've built a life that's mine, made choices that reflect my values, and learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who don't know how to love you back. The house they lost is just a building. The family I lost was already gone the moment they changed those locks. What I gained was something more valuable, the understanding that I'm worth more than what I can provide to others. And that's something no one can take away. If you like this story, please like this video and subscribe us for more such real-life-based stories. Thanks in advance.